Hello, friends. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us and being with us. Uh, wow, it's almost a new year and almost a new decade. Too crazy. But Erin Moffet is with me this afternoon, and we're going to be speaking about not serpent seed, which we will cover that in context. But we're going to be talking about flat Earth. She has a lot of questions on this topic, on this issue. Those of you that follow our work, you know that we just concluded a long, enduring trial period with the Barrow County Magistrate Court and also um, the Superior Court here on the topic of, well, no non-existent curvature, and I was being sued by an individual, William Thompson, on a flat earth challenge that I put out excuse me, after releasing my ninth book, Flat Earth, as key to decrypt the Book of Enoch. Excuse me, let me get some water real quick. But Erin, would you like to say hello to the listening audience?
Hi, thanks for having me on your channel. And I would have gone live on mine as well, but I just finished doing a whole bunch of new learning and understanding of my OBS to a point that it's going to be really exciting when I do go live again, but I didn't want to mess anything up this morning. And so I'm just going to play it cool over here.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I'm not real good with all the OBS and the live streaming. Justin, thank God, has a handle on all of that and takes care of that for us as far as Sacred Word Publishing and our joint efforts with my daughter-in-law, myself, and they do the AMAs with Gary Wayne and also Dr. Joy Jeffries Pugh. And so I'm grateful to not have to be knowledgeable on all those aspects. And so I can concentrate and focus on the other things that I do. But anyways, let's go ahead and get into the topic and kind of tell us how it was that you were led to the introspection of this particular issue, what, kind of piqued your interest, and how you've been with it, because you said that you just have recently really started to consider it with any kind of serious inquiry. So
yes, it's a good story, I think. Well, about I'd say year and a half ago, I was really researching my business. I have a business of gold and silver, so was big into researching precious metals. And I'm going to tell you guys, I was one of the most asleep people you'd have ever met. I knew nothing about anything. And as I was researching gold and silver, I started to learn some stuff about other truths, like what not serpent seed yet, but spirit cooking and things about Hillary Clinton. Anyway, you guys all know that stuff, so I'm not going to get into all that. But it started to just lead down more and more rabbit holes. And that's when I stopped and I prayed, because I had definitely had a great transformation back to the Lord about 4 or 5 years ago. And I stopped and I said, Lord, there is so much I could learn here. I can see this going many different ways. Please lead me down the paths I'm supposed to go down and let me ignore the rest. And for a very long time, the two things that I was compelled and convicted not to look into was flat earth and reptilians. And everything else I just took at lightning speed and I blew through it and I learned about it. And I was just going on what I felt the Lord was convicting me not to look at, not because he wasn't saying these things aren't true. He said, don't worry about it. And so when people would ask me what I thought about it, I said, I don't have an opinion on those things. I don't know. I've been told not to look at it right now. And that's all I would say. So rather than where you see a lot of people these days get this opinion, then they strongly attach themselves to it based on whether or not they're willing to research it, and then they won't accept any other opinion. I instead tried to just not have an opinion about something I hadn't researched yet and didn't know even how to. And I didn't want to, I guess I felt like the Lord was telling me not to look at it because I didn't want to get confused or or ignore certain things that maybe I would pay attention to. Well, it turns out that as a few months, several months went by, maybe a year or more of me researching a whole bunch of other stuff, I started to think about what reptilian was with the serpent seed. To me, I've got that figured out with the serpent seed and the reptilian race, and I don't have it figured out as far as what the blood. I'm actually working on the blood type specifically. I'm looking at what's called RH null gold blood that doesn't even have an RH on it. There is no rhesus, and I'm thinking in my mind what that might mean. They call it the gold blood because it's so rare. Only 43 people have been known to have it. And I'm saying this because it actually ties into some of the questions I have for you. You mentioned, I'll get to that in a minute. But then as I've been listening to you and getting to know you and listening to other people and finally talking about flat Earth, I feel like the Lord said, okay, you can start looking at this. And I've come to definitely believe that it's not what I've been told. In fact, it is my belief that that we can't go to space, but I don't have much to go on. I just feel that way, just as a feeling I have. And so I came up with these questions to start asking because I finally feel like I'm ready to handle whatever the truth is.
Well, that's great, because I think that's an important place to be. And until you get to a place where you can really be open-minded about an issue, you're never going to learn truth about it. And I can also understand with regard to why the Most High kept you kind of away from these issues initially, especially with, as far as reptilian bloodlines and its connections to the serpent seed. These are aspects of truth that are so just far out there that, and especially with you being new to revelatory truth, that it could turn you the other way, as far as being able to embrace it, because the truth is much stranger than reality, as the cliche saying goes. But and so I can totally see why God just told you to hold on and wait. And for those of us, even myself, being involved in a lot of this for a very long time. I've been on the air since 2006, and even now it's just come up in 2015, which there was a big awakening for a lot of people online and through YouTube and other platforms and mediums. And for whatever reason, well, I know the reasons why the Most High has brought this issue forth now, and it has to do with the whole ancient alien, that they are our creators, and that whole deception being pushed by so many in the alternative truth community now. It's for a lot of people that are just delving in, like yourself, being a year into the research and a year into the study, there's so much to consider, so much to examine. And a lot of people are easily being led astray by people that have been in the movement for a very long time. Because again, you have so many of these PhD and academics and individuals that have been part of the alternative truth movement that are embracing the whole thing that, the Sumerian mythos, that the dragon, the Anunnaki, that they are our creators. And they're trying to fit that whole paradigm into the evolutionary Copernican heliocentric model for understanding world. And so I think that, God is countering that whole movement by bringing the truth of biblical cosmology to the forefront to show everybody that not only is the Bible his inerrant word and that all things revealed in it are absolutely true, but that the plausibility of us going into space or occupying or building colonies on other so-called planets, all of that is a pipe dream, because there are no other Earth-like planets out there, and the Earth is uncommon. It's the only, as far as being the foundation for the heavens and the earth and the meeting place for spirit and matter. It's not like what we see, the luminaries, they are all something completely different from what the earth is. And so people that understand that now um, realize that the whole strong delusion of that the ancient aliens are our creators is part of, I believe, the foundation to set forth the premise of the coming Antichrist. And so, do you have a comment on that? And we can begin wherever you would like.
Yeah, I wanted to thank everybody for their patience with me on this too, because I know a lot of people in your community have probably studied this, know all about it. It's not new information to most of them. It might be to a few of you. And so I appreciate the patience and understanding for someone like me coming in with new questions. I wanted to mention that. And you talked about the Sumerian mythology, and that really struck me. A few weeks ago, I messaged you and I said, have you heard of Orm gold or Orm metals? And it's an orbitally restructured monoatomic element, and where they create, instead of having the two atoms, they make it have one. So Orm gold, they try to sell it as this miracle thing that you can take, ingest, and it's going to clear you of cancer, help you live longer, do all the things that, that I think they're going to be the promises of the coming alien people. It's kind of sounding like it's leading people to ingest something that wasn't really God made, and it's really hard to make. I don't even think you can really buy it the way they want it, the way they want to have it. But it was discovered by some guy it just appeared on his farm supposedly many years ago, but somehow he had millions of dollars to do lots and lots and lots of studies on it to recreate it. And it's like they say in the Sumerian mythology that I was listening to you say, they arrived on Earth discovering gold and that they wanted to get it back to their planet. And what's interesting is this Orm gold, or these elements that they create monoatomically, are supposed to be lighter weight so that they float like helium. So I found that really interesting, that it would be part of, it's like they're introducing that almost as part of the same idea. And that's when I started just believing, like, I don't believe we've been to the moon, because it just looks so fake. I've just been looking at that months ago and I felt like it looked fake, but I started to feel like a firmament kind of makes sense. You look at the sprites in the air, the sprites that come from that, and it creates almost like a wave outside of them.
Right.
And I had a question about, how does the sun and the moon work on a flat Earth?
Really great question. And this all comes back to, again, the book that I put out, the 9th book, Flat Earth as Key to Decrypt the Book of Enoch, because I'm going to give you what Enoch tells us and what Enoch shows us. And in a chapter, in a portion of the book of Enoch, the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries, Enoch talks about the sun and the moon moving back and forth through what are 6 portals on the western sky. And these 6 portals are divided from the Tropic of Capricorn to the Tropic of Cancer. And so what we see in this movement, and his description of the movement, he says that the sun and the moon are moving from east to west and then back north to east, so in a circle, which is exactly what we see in the time-lapse photography of the stars over the course of an evening. They are all circling, including the sun and the moon, are all circling around Polaris. That Polaris is the one fixed star of the celestial evening. And so the planets, the wandering stars, they are also moving in circle around Polaris, and not the sun. The sun is one of those that moves around Polaris, and it's not vice versa. And so anyways, Enoch describes that, and he begins his description with the sun being between the 3rd and the 4th gate of heaven, which is where the equinox is located, the equator. And so when the sun is above the equator, we know that that is the very beginning of spring. And so the sun for 3 months moves northward from the equator to the Tropic of Cancer. And over 91 days, it will reach the Tropic of Cancer for the summer solstice, and the longest day of the year for people that are in northern climates like us. And then it reverses course and begins to move southward back down through the 6 gates of heaven. Between the equator and the Tropic of Cancer is the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth gate. And so he describes how it takes the sun 30 days to move through each one of these gates, and then reaching the Tropic of Cancer for the summer solstice. It takes 1 day for it to reverse course and begin moving southward again. And so for the next 91 days, the sun will move from the Tropic of Cancer back down to the equator, and then reaching it, it will be the first day of fall, which is the autumnal equinox that happens in September. And then it will cross into southern latitudes, or what is the outer circle of the Earth, where Brazil, South Africa, the outer perimeter of the Earth, Australia, New Zealand, the outer continents and lands are located. And then that becomes their spring and their summer, and our fall and our winter. And so for the next 3 months, the sun will travel from the equator down to the Tropic of Capricorn. And then once it reaches the Tropic of Capricorn for the winter solstice and the shortest day of the year, it will reverse course and begin moving back up through what are the first three gates. The first, second, and third gates are between the Tropic of Capricorn and the equator. And so that's how Enoch describes the motions of the sun and the moon and all of the luminaries. They're moving in circle around Polaris, but specifically that the sun's back and forth movement between the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer is what creates the seasons and the movements of the duration of day and night over the course of a year. Did that make sense to you?
Well, yes, and I've seen images. So is the sun is it small? It's probably smaller, of course, than they've said, because it's not as far away. And so if it's getting a certain distance away, is that why we have nighttime? It's not going around the Earth. It's not going around a globe. It's going far enough away that it gets dark.
Well, you got to think of the Earth as like a pizza, like a round pizza. And yes, the sun is moving in circle. At the very center of that pizza, you have the North Pole. And then right above the North Pole, you have Polaris. And so all of the luminaries are moving in circle around that North Pole. And so the Tropic of Capricorn is the bigger circle that is out near, again, Brazil, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, the outer circle. And then you have the inner circle, which is closer towards the North Pole, and it's up near the Arctic region. And then you have the equator, which is the median that divides the outer and the inner circle. And so if you look at the Earth as like a pizza, a flat circular plane is what it is described in the scriptures. God said in Proverbs 8 that he would inscribe a circle upon the waters of the deep, which is exactly what he did. And so the Earth is settled in that manner as this circle engraved and inscribed upon a square, which is why it also describes the Earth as having four corners. And so it's a flat square, but it has this circle where the outer edges of where the sun's light doesn't reach. That's what builds up the mountains of snow. And the mountains of snow are what is the outer edge, the outer proximity of where the Antarctic or whatever circle, the ice rim that stays all of the waves and keeps everything, all the waters on the interior of the Earth. And so, that's how it's set up.
Well, the way I can bring serpent seed back into this is the only one of the biggest ways that makes sense to me that everything you're saying is correct is to know that Earth was created for us because of the sin of Adam and Eve before Earth was created right? I believe, as you said, the sin happened as light beings that changed their genitalia, and then the second creation is when he made him flesh, made the earth, and made everything here on earth, and then brought them and made them in the flesh on earth. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. Once they were under the authority of death and losing their bright nature, they were placed here upon the earth. But before then, they were living above the vaulted dome and where paradise is located. And so, yeah. One other thing, I was looking at the chat room, and I do want to remind people. Armored Up says that DIRTH, which that's our good brother David Wise, deep inside the rabbit hole, that he made an app, the Flat Earth Sun Moon Clock, and it shows precisely these movements. And if you look at it, you will notice that on, December 21st, 22nd, somewhere around there, that was the shortest day of the year. And that is where Enoch describes the sun reaching the Tropic of Capricorn. And now the sun is moving closer, moving back towards the equator. And so for people that want to understand and read and know about what I'm talking about, that Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verses 5 through 7 as well, especially in the Targum version, that if you read those particular passages, you'll see this exact thing being talked about. And I'll actually bring it up and look it up so I can share it with you. But yeah, for people that want to get a visual on this, do download the app. I have it on my phone, and it's precise, and it will teach you how the Enochian calendar actually works.
Well, that's I'm going to get that. And when I had an interesting conversation with a friend of mine who's a longtime Christian, and he's a great Christian. I want to I don't want to present him in any other way than a man who's out there trying to bring people to Jesus. He definitely is, but he disagrees with a lot of the things. He doesn't even want to think chemtrails are a real thing. But he listens to me, and we had a conversation about outer space. And I'll tell you guys that for me to hear growing up, and I read alien abduction stories by Whitley Strieber and people like that, and for me to hear that we were these tiny little insignificant dots in a huge universe made me feel like nothing. And I would think that a lot of other people would have felt the same way. And I think that it would be easy to convince myself that that's proof of God, but then I have to try to ask the question, well, I don't know that, if we're special, why would there be life on other planets? Well, this friend of mine, he thinks that that's possible in this big universe. And I'm saying, but that doesn't make us special. It doesn't make us who we supposedly are in the Bible. And then I'm like, so God is peopling planets all over the universe like us. Well, who care? Why does he care about us? And I'm not saying he wouldn't. You could convince yourself that he does, which this guy has done. But it also has created some other, I know it's created problems for him that he just doesn't want to look at. And for me, to hear what you have said, to have come across serpent seed even before I met you, but it just solidified what I had already started learning, and it confirmed everything. It makes me feel specially made to know the whole story, that this was made for our flesh bodies. And unfortunately, we're all going through it because of Adam and Eve, but it was made for us because of what happened. And I don't believe that a bunch of other light beings are doing it too, and he's creating planets for them. It makes way less sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the premises that I got to when I wrote my book on the firmament. One second. Because I realized that the firmament was the dividing factor between our world and God's world, and that what was being described in so many visions by so many prophets, like the John the Revelator in Revelation 4 and Revelation 15, he describes seeing the throne room of God sitting upon a sea of glass like unto crystal. And I realized that this is the top of the vaulted dome of the earth, and that we are constantly being told of this particular barrier between heaven and earth. And that New Jerusalem currently resides above the vaulted dome, and that at the end of days, New Jerusalem will descend down out of the heavens and be brought here to the earth, and that it will be here on the earth that we reign with the Most High God and the Christ, the Son, the Savior, Messiah. But I realized that, God is not having to watch over all these different planets and all these different galaxies and all these different star systems and light systems and, all these different worlds that just somehow evolved life. That all of that is absolutely not true, nor is it biblically correct. But that the Bible tells us that the earth was made especially for us, and that we were placed here to be able to inhabit it, and that there are no other earth-like worlds out there. Even though Satan, as a deception, has set up that whole Copernican heliocentric way of thinking, and I believe that all has to do with the masonry, the worship of Lucifer as the sun god, and in ancient times and all that as well. But yeah, God's right there above Polaris, right above the vaulted dome, and he is watching and has been and is keen on keeping order and allowing prophecy to control and dictate what he has revealed to us of the end from the beginning, and that we are the apple of his eye. We are the bride. We are the prodigal son. There's no other game in town. There's no other world to be paying attention to. And he is fully focused on us and what's going on here. And so, yeah, that's a comfort as well, because you think of the promise of judgment, which is included scripturally. And, again, once you understand that the biblical cosmology is without a doubt absolutely correct, then all the things that are included prophetically into the inerrant word of the Most High God, that they also have should be considered. And that includes the promise of the coming of the Messiah, first and second coming, and how he is the judge. Even the devils recognized him. Even the demons, have you come to torment us before the time? And so they know that he is the judge, and also that there's a time where the gig is up, and their whole attempt to act as if they are gods and to be like the Most High, all that will be ended, and so, yeah, very important, these topics and these considerations. And then also, when you examine scripture, you realize that 1/3 of it has been written about the last times, the end of days, the fig tree generation. And I believe we are and have reached that point. And so that it's most important for those that are alive today to read and study scripture, because it's written mostly for us. And this is a unique time in that all of the prophets and all of the patriarchs previously had all wanted to see, because everything will unfold in our lifetimes, in my opinion.
Well,
Erin?
if I was, okay, so just recently I did an interview with Archaeological from Destiny Lab. And
Great, brother. Do recommend everybody check out their music.
Yes.
My favorite band.
Mine too. In fact, it's all I listen to anymore. He's all I listen to anymore.
Yeah.
How would you answer what would you say to him when he said to me, and I didn't have these answers, and I said I was at that time I'm on the fence of where I stand. where I stand here on flat Earth. But what would you say to Ark when he said to me, I don't know if I believe in flat Earth, because in 2014, a movie came out called The Principle. And it was right after that it seemed like this psyop of information, and all these people were blowing up about flat Earth. And it kind of led him to think that maybe it wasn't a real thing, that when this movie came out and then all of a sudden it's just blowing up on the internet and on YouTube, everybody's saying flat Earth. What would you have said to him in that moment?
I'd say the same thing that I say to anybody out there. All one has to do is go and try and find curvature. It's non-existent. And so if if there is no curvature to the earth, and we can see things like lighthouses, monuments, cityscapes, like the Statue of Liberty, and islands at distances which should be impossible according to the rate and the formula for determining curvature, well, that automatically lets you know that what we've been taught is a lie. And the other thing that I would ask them to consider, and that's anybody, all the globalists that are out there, is the dynamics of water. That it is impossible for water to adhere to a ball, and that water will settle in a pool and find its natural level. And so, again, the dynamics of water, the properties of water negate that it can be adhering and somehow held, bound, all these millions and trillions of gallons of water being held to a ball. If you pour water on a ball, what happens? It drips off until it collects in a pool and creates a level. That's the dynamic of water. And so no matter what people say, the real scientific proof is that curvature is non-existent and water cannot adhere to a ball. And so those are two things that anybody anywhere in the world can verify, prove for themselves. And so, if people think it's a psyop, they really haven't looked into it in any manner. Because if you truly look into this particular topic and really consider it, it's not difficult at all to come to the truth.
I would agree. I would agree. You're just more knowledgeable than I am. So speaking on that, that makes me ask the question about airwaves like FM and AM. And I listen to some other channels who say this proves that the Earth is a globe, because the FM and the way that they behave about with the radio wave frequencies, how the further away you get, they don't go as far. I don't have a lot of knowledge on airwave frequencies, but he was talking about ham radios and how to him it proved the existence of a globe, the way the radio frequencies stop working after a while, because it must be the shape of the Earth. So the airwave frequencies that keep going out instead of going around the Earth.
No, again, no matter what you consider, the first thing you have to do is go and try to find curvature. All the FM radio, all that is bunk, because it doesn't matter, because there's no curvature. And if there's no curvature, the Earth is not spherical in shape. And so that's the first thing that they have to go and test without looking at anything else, because it's self-evident that you can see the Chicago skyline at 60 miles distant from the shores of Lake Michigan. You can see the Statue of Liberty 60 miles distance from New York City, Philadelphia, and surrounding region. You can see Oahu at 100-mile distance from the island of Kauai in Hawaii. You can see lighthouses at 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 miles distant. And so that should be impossible, because at 30 miles, you should have half a mile of curvature, making all these lighthouses, even the Statue of Liberty, impossible to see. And at 60 miles distant, you should have, so much curvature again that it would make it impossible to see. And so these kind of things, again, nullify the fact that curvature exists. There is no curvature, no matter what all the globalists and all the heliocentrists and all the people that believe that we're living on a sphere think or say. There is no curvature, and anybody in any part of the world can confirm that for themselves. And if they would just do that one simple test, they would be forced to reconsider their whole paradigm for understanding the world.
So does the moon control the tides?
No, it does not. And I'll tell you what controls the tides, and because I've done a very in-depth study on what is the true nature and the specifics of the dynamics of this world. And what it is that at the very center of where the North Pole is, there's a black lodestone mountain called Rupes Negra by the ancient explorers. And this particular mountain is all lodestone, magnetic, and that's why all the compasses point north. And this particular mountain is surrounded by a giant whirlpool. And this whirlpool, every 6 hours, it reverses the direction of, at first, it will draw in and it will drink the world's oceans, and it drops the ocean and creates low tide. It sucks in all the ocean water because all the oceans are connected together. That's why they create one sea level. And then we see that, all the land that is elevated above that sea level is the dry land that we inhabit, and that God made it this way in the creation week, in the first 4 days. But anyway, so this particular indrawing sea, every 6 hours it will reverse course. And then after sucking in all the world's oceans for 6 hours, it will then expel them in geyser. And that's what floods the waters of the oceans back out onto the plane of the earth. And then it creates high tide. And then 6 hours later, it starts to suck the world's oceans in again. And so this cycle is the true tidal cycle, and that's what creates the high and the low tides twice a day.
Very new information for me, but it sounds completely, makes sense. It makes sense in my mind. So, okay, you are familiar with Justin Fowle Brothers?
Yeah, I am.
They talk about Hollow Earth a lot, and I've listened to them about Hollow Earth, and then I've looked at just recently, because I'm going to be doing a new video coming up, and I'm really excited about, based on a movie I watched. But it's a lot about underground stuff. It points to a lot of underground movies. And then the Sumerian, I started looking at the Hopi tribe because the movie points to that, the Hopi tribe and what they believed. And I'm not saying, I want everyone to know I'm not talking about these mythological stories as being real. I'm just wondering if they have some connection to the truth in some way. It's just a question I have. So in the Hopi creation story, you've got the sun god and you've got the spider queen, and she controls the magic of the underworld, and he's the one that has all the I don't know. He's the one that thinks the creation out, and they marry each other, and they create earth between them. But when they created people, they created them in caverns, and one day they walked them out, and they had a sun and the moon in the caverns, and they needed light out on the surface, so they created a sun and a moon. And apparently it goes a lot along with the Sumerian mythology. Correct me if I'm wrong. What do you think about any idea of hollow earth or cavernous places where demons or Satan or another world like Agartha could exist?
Yeah, that's absolutely the same conclusion that I came to, because, in my opinion, what's called the abysmal chasm, it's this same thing is referred to in the Bible as the bottomless pit. And this hollow earth entrance is found at the North Pole. And again, it's this hollow earth entrance, this abysmal chasm, which sucks in the oceans of the world every 6 hours and then spits them back out. But that is the opening to Sheol and to what is referred to in Job 26 and Enoch chapter 18. They speak about a place, actually I can pull this up, but they speak about a place where there's not a firmament above, and that it says that the earth hangs upon nothing. And that is actually a reference to this opening in the near where the North Pole is. And again, if people want to know more about what I'm talking about, because I do have in Paradise, the Sides of the North, and the Mount of the Congregation, which is my 19th book, I cover in great detail this particular topic, and also how the giants are bound in the interior of the earth, and that they will be released as the locust army at the end of days. All of this is found in scripture as well. But I'll share this passage from Job. It says that dead things are formed from under the waters, and the inhabitants thereof. Hell is naked before him, speaking of the Most High, and destruction hath no covering. He stretcheth out the north over the empty place, and hangeth the earth upon nothing. He bindeth up the waters in his thick clouds, and the cloud is not rent under them. He holdeth back the face of his throne, and spreadeth his cloud upon it. He hath compassed the waters with bounds until the day and night come to an end. The pillars of heaven tremble and are astonished at his reproof. He divided the sea with his power and his understanding. He smiteth through the proud. And so all of this is talking about, again, the real dynamics of the creation. Because as I've shared it and as I've covered it in great detail, Jacob's ladder is at the North Pole, and where he sees the angels ascending and descending, that they are ascending into the third heaven, which is where the Most High has established New Jerusalem and the throne room, the heavenly temple. And also that the place of the righteous, paradise, is there above the vaulted dome. And then the earth is the meeting place for heaven and hell. And then you have this abysmal chasm, this bottomless pit, directly under Polaris and under this lodestone mountain, Rupus Negra. And that it leads into the interior of the earth. And that's where Sheol is found. That's where Satan and Legion and the demons are located.
So, when you talk about the angels ascending and ascending, I remember that from John 1:51, and I took a note of that months ago, and it's just been sitting on my whiteboard up in the corner, and I wondered about that. I was like, is this another fallen angels thing, or what could that mean? But you've just explained it, and now I know why it's been sitting on my whiteboard for, I don't know, 5 or 6 months.
Yeah, I would. Again, if you want to know the details of the true dynamics of the way, the shape, and the earth, and how it all works, I recommend people checking out the Paradise, the Sides of the North, and the Mount of the Congregation, because I share specifically passages from what is the letter of Gerardus Mercator, who created the northern polar projection map that shows how the real, that the paradise was located at the north, and how the 4 quadrants, the 4 rivers, it's all divided, and that this particular lodestone mountain is located there, as well as this giant whirlpool, this indrawing sea. He shows it on his maps, but all this disappears after, I believe it was 1577, where he wrote this letter to John Dee and describes all this. But then all the maps thereafter, they just show the North Pole as being, a big Arctic Ocean, which it is not. But anyways, and I also share a book called The Inventio Fortunata, and the specifics of these ancient historians and also explorers that describe having encountered and running into and seeing this whirlpool and this mountain, and they describe it in their adventures. And there's also the stories and the mythology of Aeneid, Virgil, and of Odysseus in the Forget the name of that book. But anyways, the one that describes all of Odysseus's adventures. And then Jason and the Argonauts, all three of these explorers describe encountering what is said to be Charybdis in the Greek mythology, which is believed to be an ancient sea monster, but it's actually a giant whirlpool. And so if you have the understanding of truth, you can connect the dots and understand the discernment that really unites all these things in reality.
Have you ever heard of anything called the Summer Gate in the ice wall?
No. What is it?
Okay, I've seen maps, and again, they're really poor maps. But because I've seen them, I wanted to ask you about it. They're not clear. There's a lot of them are blurry, but you'll see these maps that show all our countries and everything, and just the way you described it, with the North Pole being at the center, and then on the ice wall at the edge, there's what's called a summer gate that goes out into more waters where there's other countries and names and another sun and another moon, and then some even depict another ice wall with waters beyond that. That's not something you've ever seen?
Not that I can recall. It sounds very interesting. I would be interested in you sharing that with me. But I have heard of, like, for instance, there was this 1,000-year-old Buddhist map that was recently spoken about, and that was the news story of its discovery in Hawaii, was shared with the world. And it shows, also openings in the Antarctic ice wall and lands beyond. And this also falls in line with what is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a book that was revered in the Vedic cosmology and cosmogony. And in those particular texts, they also describe in many chapters exactly what Enoch describes as the movement of the luminaries and the sun, the moon, and then the earth at the North Pole being divided in these 4 quadrants with these 4 rivers, and then other lands out beyond this particular ice wall, and that's where these so-called demigods live. But and so I know about these things, but the particular map you're talking about, I'm not familiar with, so I would definitely be interested in checking it out, though.
I don't know if you guys can see on the Discord, but I went into your Flat Earth and I just copied and pasted an image of it in there. Not that you have to rush in and look for it right now.
Yeah, I'll check it out sometime.
I went and looked at a bunch of older maps because I started looking into, not deeply yet, but I know it's something I'm excited about, is Tartaria, which you excitedly have looked into. So I was going to ask you, I was going to text you, I'm like, have you looked into this? And then I saw you had a whole video on it that I definitely have listened to quite a bit, and another video from another guy that has some great pictures, images, drawings, and maps that really was kind of pointing to what might be a time more recently when people had more technology than we have today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have looked at, and I do believe that when you really look at the maps of, for instance, even the past millennia, that you see what we have been told with as far as even the creation of the Great Lakes, and even the creation of California, and it's being actually connected to the continent of the United States of America, that these are recent as far as occurrences and events which led to their occurrence, that these things had to have happened within the creation of maps dating back to the 16th through the 18th centuries. And because in the older maps, you see that California is just an island off of the coast of the United States of America, or what was not the United States of America, but what was the Empire of Tartaria, in these ancient times. And that the Great Lakes were not even depicted on some of these early maps. And so there was something that occurred that led to, and even the Grand Canyon and the scale that we see as having happened, perhaps even within the last 300 or 400 years. But then also the whole event with regard to the mud floods and to the destruction of what are the Tartarian empires and this megalithic structure, which was built worldwide in similar precedent and similar architectural design, that these are things that we don't know about and have not heard about, and which are not even taught in the mythologies or the histories of America or other countries in the world, that somehow this massive empire just disappeared and is not even mentioned anymore, but is absolutely found all over the maps of the world in ancient times. It just lets you know that we're not being taught truth with regard to history or mythology or anything, and that we're all having to really try to figure it out from the ancient manuscripts, in my opinion, and the ancient maps.
Somebody mentioned this guest doesn't even know if she believes the earth is flat or not. No, I know that I was told by the Lord to wait before deciding on a firm belief. So I haven't ever created a belief system until recently. And I've come to believe a lot what Zen believes and says. And like I said in the beginning, I appreciate all of you who who already know this stuff and believe this stuff to be true and know it to be true, for listening to me as I come along and try to understand how it all works. I've come to a point where I definitely believe that it's not what we've been told, but I just wasn't sure how it all worked. And so I'm really grateful that you're answering these questions for me and letting me have this opportunity to just be kind of vulnerable inside of a group of people where they could say, well, we already know all this. How dare you come? And I've had that happens. And there have been people who get angry and don't want to talk to me and help me out with these questions. So I really appreciate that you're doing this for me.
Yeah, no problem at all. And also, I want to remind people that some of even my closest friends, like we do AMAs, or my son and my daughter do Ask Me Anything shows with both Gary Wayne and Dr. Joy Jeffries Pugh. And even though just recently Dr. Joy came out in support somewhat of Flat Earth, she still has not looked into it in great detail. And so there's a lot of people that are even very advanced and very well-respected researchers in the alternative truth community that are like you and that are exactly where you are with regard to this topic. And so those of us that know different and better, we have to be patient with others, because even myself initially, I thought the topic to be ludicrous, and I was not going to waste my time looking into it and examining it in any manner. But only after I did so, and that I learned again that curvature is non-existent, that water cannot adhere to a ball, that I was really forced to go deeper with this particular issue and my investigation of it. And so I want to remind people that, again, 97% of the world thinks we're insane for even considering it, and that they have not caught up to us in the examination of this issue, and that a lot of people really don't even consider it important. And so, and they won't, again, until, in my opinion, a lot of people are bending the knee to accept the mark of the beast and are buying into the whole premise that the fallen angels are, or the extraterrestrials are our creators, that it will come to the forefront, and that a lot of people will realize then that the study of cosmology is really important for not only our faith, but also with regard to truth. And so don't, yourself, Aaron, don't be apologetic, because a lot of people are where you are. And I'm just giving thanks to you for really going into the study of this with open mind and for really wanting to seek answer and for reaching out to somebody like myself that is willing to share with you even my own journey to awakening on this issue.
Right, because there's always going to be something that even you don't know still. There's always going to be
Oh,
something
yeah,
that
of course.
and I'm finding connections and I get excited about them. Like I said, I never believed when I started my own channel. Never did I think that I was going to start connecting up certain videos to where one of my most recent deep digs I did, I asked people to watch about 3 or 4 other videos before even watching that one, because I just couldn't believe how the Lord had connected this information for me. And again, that's why he, like you said, he told me to hold off of other certain things I just wasn't ready to understand. Because in the beginning, when somebody asked me about reptilians, I was like, I don't know if it's interplanetary alien stuff or not. I didn't know until I came across serpent seed, and then it just was like, boom, I know exactly what it is.
Right. And, that's the way it is. I mean, there's so much with regard to truth and prophetic truth and to what has been hidden from us. And, we are living at a time where the Spirit of the Most High and the Holy Spirit is being poured out upon all flesh, that so much truth is coming to light and in such quick manner. I mean, even the fact that now we, have access to a lot of manuscripts which have been hidden and preserved by people and groups and individuals that gave their lives even to preserve them and to make them available. I mean, yeah, there's so much coming out now that nobody can keep up with it all. And really, we need all each other as a body, the body of Christ, um, to consider and to learn and to grow together. And so, nobody has all the answers, and that's why it's important that we come together in this manner to talk about the things that we've learned and to encourage each other in growth and investigation. And so, otherwise, we just get caught up in a box, and especially for those that think they know already everything and different and better. I mean, if you are not open to embracing new possibility, uh, you're only going to learn or consider what you think you already know of a truth. And that's how so many people get stuck in the matrix. And because of that, are really deceived until they can embrace new possibility.
Okay, well, I do have a couple more questions.
Yeah,
So
sure.
let's hit it. Okay, so what do you think? What is it? This is kind of a broad question. We do seem to have these planets, right, that are different than the stars, would you say, or is that not true?
Yeah, the wandering stars. Yeah.
So do you mind explaining why, what these are and why?
Yeah, sure. Um, Again, according to scripture, there are 7 what we call planets and what are alluded to as wandering stars in the book of Enoch. But in the Bible, what is referenced as planets has to do with the Mazzaroth and the constellations. And so there's, again, nothing Earth-like. And what we traditionally believe planets to be, they're not Earth-like either. They're just a set of luminaries that move differently from what are the Mazzaroth or the zodiac, the constellations. And what I mean is by most of the stars in the heaven, they are set to this specific pattern of constellation and stars, which we call the Mazzaroth. And they don't break from or move independently of this giant pattern. However, the wandering stars, these particular luminaries, which we call planets, they have a distinct and individual movement. And those particular planets are referenced in the ancient accounts as being the sun, the moon, Mercury, Mars, Venus, Saturn, and Jupiter. And it describes how when God created the lower heavens beneath the vaulted dome of the earth, that he subdivided what is outer space and the atmosphere into 7 quadrants. And these are called the 7 heavens. And it is in these 7 heavens that God appointed as tabernacle the different regions where each one of these wandering stars, each one of these planets, they move and hold independent movement. And so the tabernacle of these particular 7 heavens, they contain and they regulate and they hold within them the movement of, again, the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter. And so these 7 stars have a completely different cycle and also a different influence on what is cited as, people believe in horoscopes, and they talk about how these particular planets and these particular luminaries, they have a influence on the people that are born into, wherever, whatever year and however the constellations were laid out during that particular time. And so they have a movement which is independent, again, of the greater design, the Mazzaroth. And that's why we see that these particular luminaries have a different regulated pattern and also a different cycle and a different movement according to their placement in the 7 heavens. And that, the sun specifically has a very intriguing set pattern, because it's the sun's movement back and forth between the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer, which denotes and regulates the seasons, and that it is the equinoxes and the solstices which divide the seasons into the different portions of the year. And so that's the distinction between the wandering stars and the rest of the luminaries that make up the Mazzaroth.
So that has something to do with whatever it means for Mercury to be in retrograde?
Yes, because according to the way that Mercury moves in circle around Polaris, that in certain instances it has the appearance of moving backwards, but that's, again, just because of its circuit, the cycle that has been established for it in the heavens. And we don't see the fullness of that cycle because of the alternating 12 hours a day and 12 hours a night. And also because when it reaches a certain movement of its circuit, that portion is hidden to us. And so, yeah, those kind of things create what is seemingly in perspective retrograde.
And for some reason, a lot of Satanists or Luciferians or whatever you want to call them have chosen, or maybe has been chosen for them, Saturn. Like I did a video about it on the black cube of Saturn and all the cube references in the Philosopher's Stone and Hermetic Alchemy, and Saturn being a big part of that. Do you have a simple answer as to why you think Saturn, they either chose it or it was chosen for them? What is up with Saturn?
I think that, and I don't know specifically, but if people look up the different historical and astrological significances of the different planets, like the sun, the moon, um, that Mercury is, or not Mercury, but Mars. Mars is said to be related to times of war or to conflict or to battles in the affairs of humanity. And Venus is associated to love. Um, that Saturn is in some manner, and actually, let me look it up here while I'm talking about it, that it could have connection in some manner to what you're alluding to here. And with regard to the cube, I'm not certain as to what the cube you're talking about. Um, but let's see.
Well, it's something that they show when they say they, the ubiquitous they, but it's something that's shown a lot in videos like Superstars. That gal that does like Shake It Up, and I did a video on it, and there's several people. I don't memorize everything I ever do a video on. I'm not as good as you. I'm getting there, and that's how I learn. Is I make the videos. It's one of the ways that's helped me learn. But they are always, it goes back to the Philosopher's Stone and Hermetic alchemy. But their way of finding the final thing that's going to make them live forever and join up in their duality and have this ascension.
Yeah, I can't really speak on that with regard to, any kind of informed opinion because I've not really looked at it or studied it. But just pulling up here, it says Saturn in the astrological significance is the ruling planet of Capricorn and is exalted in Libra. In Roman mythology, is the god of agriculture, the founder of civilizations, social order, and conformity. It's interesting that Saturn has, again, the connection to Capricorn because it is then, when the sun reaches the Tropic of Capricorn that we have the shortest day of the year, and that we then transition from what would be death and winter to then soon spring and harvest. But, again, what the elites believe about Saturn and its connections, I really don't have any knowledge on that. However, I would recommend that people, if you want to know what the Bible or what the biblical belief of the connections of Saturn, and I'll pull that up. One can find that in the Chronicles of Jeremiah, where it talks about the creation of the planets and the stars. And so I'll read to you what it says about Saturn, and perhaps it can give us some answer.
Do you mind repeating that again? The Chronicles of what?
The Chronicles of Jeremiah, Jerahmeel. It's a particular text that it's a very ancient text that was published by Moses Gaster, and it has great information, a parallel account on the creation of, the sun, the moon, the stars, the planets, all of that. And if people study it, look into it, it provides great information on the biblical cosmology again. And I'll just read a little portion of it just to give people an idea. It says, the following 7 planets God created and placed in order in the firmament for the benefit of the world. For by means of them, people calculate the signs, seasons, astronomical computation, the time of summer, the number of the hours, days, months, periods, and festivals. As it is said, they shall be for signs, for seasons, for days, and for years. The 7 days of the week are called after the 7 planets. The sun, and again, this shows you that, the earth is not considered a planet. And also that the sun and moon are included with the other planets. The 7 days of the week are called after the seven planets: the Sun, Venus, Mercury, the Moon, Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars. On the first day, Sol, which is the Sun, rules, and this day is called Zondak. I'm going to actually skip the names of the days and go to the influences. Okay, and here it says that the firmament is divided into 7 degrees, one above the other. They are 7 distinct places for the 7 planets, and this is their order. The first degree is near the earth, and this lowest degree is the habitation of the moon, in which the moon makes a circuit round the firmament. The second degree is the habitation of Mercury, in which it describes its circuit in the firmament. The third degree is Venus. The fourth is for the Sun. The fifth degree is for Mars. It skips the sixth for some reason. And then it says the seventh degree is for the highest of all, the habitation of Saturn, which it takes 3 years for it to complete a circuit around Polaris. And then here it says the influences of these particular planets upon humanity. This is the order of their work. Saturn is appointed over the poor and the needy, women over faintness and sickness, diseases of the body, and over death. His appearance is like that of an old man with a sickle in his hand. And, since the elite worship, in my opinion, Lucifer and death, it would make sense that they would have this kind of connections. It says Mars is appointed over war, bloodshed, the sword, over the wicked, over slander, over strife, battle, hatred, jealousy, quarrels, over warriors, wounds, injuries, bruises, over fire, water, and destruction. His appearance is like that of an armed warrior, with a sword in his right hand, and he appears like a man of wrath and a stirrer up of strife. I'll just read quickly a few of the other ones and then we'll move forward. Jupiter is appointed over life, peace, and good, over prosperity, tranquility, joy, pleasant conversation, rejoicing, richness, greatness, sovereignty, and majesty. Venus is appointed over kindness, favor, love, lust, passion, desire, marriage, the birth of man and animals, the fruits of the earth, and the fruits of the tree. Mercury is appointed over wisdom, discretion, understanding, knowledge, and the active intellect, enabling one to unravel mysteries, to devise plans in every branch of work, and in the writings of any language. The sun is pointed over light to separate light from darkness, and through it to enable us to calculate the days, months, and years, and to do every kind of work, to make any kind of work, to walk any distance, to migrate from city to city, and from town to town. The moon holds the key of heaven and earth, and is appointed over morning and evening. She is set over all creatures to lead them in right or wrong way, although she has no power in herself, either to do evil or good. Everything was created by means of the word of God, and hence the rabbis have said that the orbit of the sun and the circuit of the moon, the order of the stars, the arrangement of the planets, the calculations of their circuits, the length of days and the division of the hours, which at first are long, then become gradually shorter, are all the work of God. And so we see again that, the 7 planets and their circuits, the way that they move in the firmament around Polaris, that this is what God established as the creation of the Mazzaroth and the celestials.
That explains a lot. That'd be nice to have, because you have this information, which is why I come to you, which is great. And so much has been hidden from us. Just to know that there's something out there that explains it in a way that makes sense. It's easy to understand, and it answers quite a few questions in a small amount of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, myself, I'm not going to give you my opinion or what I think about something unless it's backed up from what I've learned from the ancient manuscripts. And so, with regard to the influence, of the planets. This isn't something that's from Tarot, but this is from, the description as I find it from the connection of the creation on the fourth day, as presented by the Chronicles of Jeremiah, which is a book based on the beliefs of the ancient patriarchs of Israel.
Okay, I could ask a lot of. I don't have any more written questions.
Well,
yes, I do. I have one more.
Go with your heart.
I have one more written question. I've seen you post up pictures of the earth on pillars, which is the Jewish or old Jewish or Hebrew belief, I think, of what the earth looks like. Are there pillars that the earth sits on?
Yes, and this is described, again, in 2 Samuel, I believe. It describes that the pillars of the earth are the Lord's. And this has to do with, in my opinion, that the interior of the earth is hollow. And so that the surface of the earth and that the hollow aspects of the interior of the earth, which make up the domain of Sheol and the different levels all the way down to Tartarus, that these pillars uphold, what is the flat surface of the earth, and that what are described as the pillars of the heaven, that they are actually the connection of the firmament to the outer circle of the earth. And so, yeah, there are actual pillars. And again, it just, in my opinion, has to do with the architecture of how the earth comes together with the interior of the earth, because it does describe the earth as being porous. And that's why we see that even a lot of the waters that make up in the waters of the deep, they are found in the interior of the earth and not just on the surface with regard to the oceans. And that's why, during the flood of Noah's day, that it was instrumental that God not only opened the windows of heaven, but that he opened the fountains of the deep, and that a lot of what ended up flooding the earth came from those deeper levels.
You reminded me of something when you said that about Noah opening up the floodwaters opening up from heaven. So my friend that believes that the huge universe explains God also said that that's when the firmament went away, and I didn't have a good argument with that, because I was like, maybe, right? So his argument was, if there is no more firmament since that happened with Noah and the waters coming from the heavens.
No, that's absolutely not true. Because again, the firmament, when you examine it and you look at it and study it in great detail, on the second day, it says that the firmament was created as a barrier for the waters above and the waters below. And that this firmament it comes from the word rakia in the Hebrew, which means a solid expanse. And that it is believed to be crystalline in nature and also impenetrable. And so it is a hard, rigid, firm structure, which is also where we get the word firmament, and that, which is a Latin word, but it is also connected in ideology with being firm, rigid, hard, and as a barrier between the waters above and the waters below. And that's why we see that even in Job, when he describes it as a mirror, like a molten looking glass. And so anybody that really looks at and examines the firmament, it is described as being impenetrable and as being a solid structure and as being a bowl encapsulating the circle of the earth, much like in what we see with regard to a snow globe.
And so when the waters fell from the heavens, the Lord it came from above the firmament or below it?
Yes, above from the firmament. And that's why God opened the windows of the deep. And it's my opinion that even our looking up into the sky now, that the reason we see the sky as blue is because there's an entire ocean of water above the firmament uh, currently. And that's why even in Psalms, I believe it's 148, it speaks about the waters, that there are waters above the firmament even now, after the flood of Noah's day, and even in this current day and moment and age.
Well, you may not have an answer to this one because it's kind of more my area, but because it's my area, I wonder if you've talked about this or thought about this or wrote about this. Do you think people have gone up to the firmament and tried to bring anything back from it?
When you say, you mean like NASA or?
Yeah, any kind of ship, space, whatever you would call it. I know it's not going to outer space, but they've tried to get to it, seeing that they can't get through it. And because my thought is, I look into what's called the black goo. I'm now called it also black gold, which is also leads into the orm, the gold that can float like helium. But this dark black thick substance, I wondered if the firmament wasn't maybe made of that, and bringing it down brought some kind of troubles with it, if they did that such a thing, or if they were capable of such a thing. I have no idea. These are just thoughts that go through my head when I research the stuff I do.
Yeah, with regard to the black goo, it's my opinion that the firmament is crystalline like glass, and that there's said to be some kind of some kind of stone, which I don't remember what it's, but people speculate that it could be portions of the firmament, and that the firmament is, in certain places breaking up, and that especially when they did the Operation Fishbowl and they sent up all these nuclear devices to test the proximity and the height of the firmament in different areas of the world, that perhaps some of these pieces were loosened from the firmament, and that naturally it could shed off in some manner certain portions of the firmament, and that it becomes this particular substance that is found here on the earth. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But again, I do believe that the firmament is crystalline, said to be semi-transparent, and that's why we can see through it the waters above, which makes the sky blue. Um, but I have heard about the black glue in certain manner, but I don't really recall what it is, and because again, my focus is on the scriptures, the ancient manuscripts, and that's where I really devote a lot of my time. Um, but I do believe that with regard to the firmament, that it can be easily tested as to how the shape of the firmament and how high the firmament is in the different areas of the world, and that you can do that with radio waves, that they bounce the radio waves off of the solid structure of the firmament in order to make hearing radio and even TV broadcasts are doing the same thing, that these transmissions are being bounced off of, they say clouds, but clouds aren't solid, you know. So there's something solid up there that they are reverberating these signals off of. And in my opinion, that is confirmation as to uh, the solid structure of the firmament, which is above us. And so I do believe that if people wanted, they could test how high the firmament was. Like if, for instance, if you wanted to know how high the firmament is at its um, highest altitude, that would be where Polaris is. And so you would just have to go to where the North Pole is and to um, send signal upwards to where Polaris is located and to find out how high the firmament actually is. And that this kind of study can be done off of every altitude and in different as you go out towards the outer circle of the firmament where it comes down and joins in union with the circle of the earth.
Well, I'll just mention my knowledge. Just if you don't mind, I'll mention why I asked that about the black
Yeah,
goo.
no, please.
My knowledge of it has definitely become what somebody said, being used in transhumanism and AI technology. Absolutely. I go along with what Anthony Patch says. He calls it programmable matter. And we see it in so many movies like Venom. I mean, we could name probably several where you've seen black goo, but Venom is the one that I've put my focus on because it's going to be the promise of everlasting life and freedom of death on earth, though, not the way that we're supposed to do it with Jesus Christ. And it's demonic in its nature, of course. And Anthony Patch talks about it by laying down a third DNA strand with gold. And I couldn't understand why gold for the longest time until I looked into Orm gold, which has a conductivity 40,000 times that of our own DNA. So it would be fast and it would cure all diseases. And you look at Venom, the character of Venom had cancer before his symbiote came, the black goo symbiote that takes over. But he had to agree to let him be a part of his body before the symbiote could take over and cure his cancer and fight these battles for him. And so I bring it up because it was a belief from some movies. And I look at movies as kind of one of my fun things I like to do. And I've made videos on movies, like the movie Get Out, and I'm doing another one pretty soon on the movie Us. But it's interesting for me because I don't get frightened by it. This isn't a scare tactic. It's just interesting. Again, like we talk about some of these things not being salvational to start interest. Mm-hmm. There's some movies that have pointed to going up to the atmosphere and possibly bringing back something like the black goo. And that's why I asked. I was like, is it even possible that in looking at movies and in the interest of my area, is it possible we went up there and could grab something like that and pull it down? And it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like it's something very different.
Yeah, I don't personally believe that, we're able to breach or to grab, from the firmament. I don't know, but, I do believe that there is something up there, and whether they can take samples or not, I really don't have any idea with regard to that. But it is interesting to me, you mentioned monatomic gold, that I did a series of interviews with an individual named Peter Moon who knows about the whole story of the Basigi Mountains and its connection to an ancient library said to have been established by giants long ago, and that this library has this holographic projection and it contains all the knowledge of the ancients with regard to what occurred in the past that led to even the establishment of the earth in the way that it is now. But anyways, in a series of books he wrote about the discovery of this particular library of the ancients and its connections to the Romanian secret societies and also to the intelligence branches of the military, that there's a particular individual that he met that had knowledge of this information and that shared it with him in certain aspect, that they talk about the monatomic gold and how it has beneficial effects with regard to longevity and to quote unquote immortality. And so that's a whole series of books and it's supposedly based on truth. And so that's something you might want to consider. But I'll send you a link to a lot of the shows that I did where I talk about that. I did a series again of interviews with this individual named Peter Moon, who's, he believes in a lot of the New Age stuff. So, but he has access to information that not a lot of people do, and he does make mention of and talks about the monatomic gold in great depth within that particular series.
Yeah, I do find it very interesting because one of my thoughts was if that's what they're using, you talked about us being, I've taken your information and used it, saying that we used to be light beings and we didn't have to walk. And if we were taking this monoatomic gold and it was promising cures and it was promising living forever, that could be the mark of the beast, in my opinion, if they're using it alongside
Yeah,
a DNA strand.
right.
And then you'd be, like Revelations 9:6, wanting for death and crying for death and not able to have it. But it also made me think that perhaps because it has this light nature to it, that, like helium, that people would be able to float with it. It was a thought I had.
Hmm. Well, that's a interesting consideration. Um, there was one of the, yes, I did want to bring up one other story since you made mention of the third strand of DNA. And this has to do with a article that Steve Quell had released a long time ago about a DNA researcher that had inherited an investigative study by one of his friends that following his death, he had been hired by this elite that was, part of these Illuminati bloodlines, and that this particular individual wanted to know if their DNA was different from that of, he said, the sons of Adam. And he talked about how they believed that his bloodline were the children of Cain and that they had triple strand DNA, and that he wanted to know if the sons of Cain could be saved. And so there was this entire long investigation that talked about, and I'll share just a little bit with you, this particular differentiation. And I found it truly fascinating because, again, you don't hear a lot of people talking about this triple strand DNA and its possible connections to the sons of Cain and how they could be distinct or different in some manner from the rest of humanity. Um, and this will give you an idea. I'll share this with you. And I did write about and release this in its entirety in one of my books, Skyfall, The Angels of Destiny, as well as Lucifer, Father of Cain, and then The Great Contest to the Enmity Between the Seed Line. But just to give you a background, a little bit of information on this, and I'll share with you a link to a show where I covered this entire story. It says, in his notes, my friend Payne penned some personal thoughts after having considered his observations and the source of his DNA materials. On the plane ride back stateside, my friend, who at the time was one of the most knowledgeable DNA researchers on the planet, pulled out the biggest piece of mental jerky I've ever gnawed on. His benefactor test subject believed that while most of the sons of Adam had double strand DNA, he had been told by his family that he and his blood relatives were distinctly different, and that he, like his fathers before him, had triple strand DNA. He wanted my friend to secretly prove once and for all if this was true or not. The subject claimed that his extended family and their cousins, who are kings, queens, princes, and princesses, as well as leaders of industry and banking worldwide, they believe they are children of an otherworldly race of humanoid beings. He'd been taught by his tutors that once upon a time, his ancestors had fallen to earth after some cosmic calamity in the time before the garden. He believed that while their ancestral mother was Eve, their ancestral father was not Adam. He was torn to know if a child of Cain was actually genetically different and whether he could be saved. He thought of the Vatican's pronouncement that the aliens are our cousins, and the Vishnu teachings of a time when gods flew in spaceships and destroyed whole cities in a single blast. He even had notes about Elijah being caught up in a chariot of fire. Maybe he had misread or misunderstood the entire history of his Bible. Maybe from Genesis to Revelation, it was about some far more tangible and real fallen angel, alien cousins than the ghost like destroying angels he'd always pictured in his imaginations. Our subject and his kin had been taught by their families and tutors that once upon a time their ancestors falling to earth after some cosmic calamity in the time before the garden, they believed that while their ancestral mother was Eve, their ancestral father was not Adam. They believe that they are our humanoid cousins, super, hybrid, half alien and only half human. They once reigned from Olympus and were pharaohs. Whatever the real truth of their history, their belief is the driver of their actions. Being the true believers they are, they will continue to operate in accordance with their belief and the laws of alien Darwinian type survival. That's why they interbreed, to maintain the purity of their bloodline. That's why they secretly meet and connive to pass power between themselves. And that's why they must fool the rest of mankind into wars of self-destruction and death, so that we may be forever enslaved to their lusts on this prison planet, till death do us part. More than afraid, they know in their hearts that this is a fight for survival. And it had begun, just as my friend had said, as a murder investigation, starting with the first murder when that Luciferian demon dad had first whispered of the evil deed to his willing child, Cain. It continued down through time, the sons of Adam fighting for survival, destroying the alien giants in Canaan land, David and the hybrid Goliath and his 4 hybrid brothers, and all the hidden true believers ever since, hiding in plain sight, so powerful, so important, yet so afraid. One more passage. These earthbound half-cousins of ours, they continue to laugh, but it is a nervous laugh at that, as they have a joke or two at our expense, recreating their lying fathers' fall to earth, flashing their heretofore secret gang signs, hand signs to each other, right in our faces. I know now how dangerous their beliefs are, because they are being driven by their beliefs, taught to them by their real alleged father, the father of lies. And even now he knows the truth and whispers into his initiate's ear, just as he did into Cain's ear, that the sons of Adam, as long as they live, they are dangerous. And so, again, this makes mention of the triple strand DNA and how the bloodline, the Illuminati elite, believe that they are connected to what occurred in the garden with the beguilement of Eve and her impregnation with Cain.
I think that explains exactly how I think of it. It's far more than just an Rh negative. It's easy to say, oh, it's Rh negatives, but there's something to it about the copper bloods too, because they don't like the iron. I won't get into it. But the third strand would be the beast for us, because it will be promises of living like them. It'll be promises of living forever, promises of being free of disease, promises of never having cancer, which are all the promises we already have, but not supposed to be here on this earth in the flesh, and they're creating it in the flesh. I believe if we accept the mark, and you can say it's going to come a million different ways, and I'm not here to argue which way it'll come, but if you accept a third strand DNA, let's say, with Orm gold that has a conductivity of 40,000 times out of our own DNA, their ability to then use airwaves to completely control us, I think that would be why we will have no ability of salvation at that point. We won't even be able to think for ourselves if we accept that and we're able to be
Hmm.
controlled in the way that they will have us controlled at that point.
Right. And, their whole search for immortality and the trying to circumvent judgment, that's going to be part of the promise of even the cyborg technology of, why not implant this microchip into your mind so you can directly access the internet, or, things of longevity that you can, not ever have to die. These kind of things are the promises that Satan has been giving to these bloodlines for a very long time. And and you could see the temptation, um, that you can just take on another body. Like if your body is breaking down, or it's about to die, or if you have cancer or whatever, that you could just upload your mind into a different form, a different um, vessel, and escape judgment and never have to worry about uh, whether the consequences of you doing good or evil will have any bearing upon you know whether you will go to heaven or hell. These are things that um, will absolutely tempt the elite into taking this mark of the beast and accepting this kind of technology. Oh, also, and it says in the chat room, Anita says that, they will seek death and not be able to find it. And I do believe absolutely that this will be one of the consequences of their buying into and accepting such technology.
Right, I agree, and I think a lot of us will do it too. Will accept it as well because they need a certain amount of people. What is it, 500 million, to serve the purposes that they want us to serve as literal cattle to the elite. And that will be another time where we could probably see a lot of us just dying and the rest of us just being controlled.
Right, exactly.
And
Yeah,
I don't say us as in you and me. I mean the human
right,
race.
right. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And, a lot of Christians too. And again, this, in my opinion, all ties back to um, the foundation for the Darwinian, that we evolved the monkeys, the Copernican heliocentric model for understanding world, the things that were written down in the Sumerian um, mythos, like you were talking about the creation stories. Well, in the Sumerian creation story, it's called the Enuma Elish, which was one of the Babylonian, and it's also tied to the Sumerian. It speaks about how the outer planets that they had somehow captured Nibiru, and it became part of our solar system, and that this is how the Anunnaki arrived here on the Earth, and that they were trying to get access to the gold in order to save their own planet and to heal a breach uh, in their atmosphere, and that they had established colonies on the moon and Mars in order to transport this gold to their particular planet. And so the whole basis, and this is one of the reasons why so many people also believed in the Sumerian mythology, is that they teach a heliocentric worldview. And they believe because of that, that this information can be trusted, and that it far surpasses the knowledge that is contained within Scripture. Because again, NASA, them teaching us that we live in a solar system, the Galileo and Copernican model teaching that we live in the solar system, all of that has been put forth in ideology to set the foundation for, oh yeah, that the Sumerians were correct, that the ancient belief in the Earth being spheroid in shape, all of that, all those people can be trusted, and that this knowledge was critical, and that the Bible's wrong, and it can be thrown out, and you can't trust it because if it doesn't even know that the Earth is a sphere, how can you trust it on anything else? And so the actual truth is that the Earth isn't a sphere. There is no curvature. That water cannot adhere to a ball. And so when people come to the truth of this, it completely debunks the whole idea that, the fallen angels are extraterrestrials from other galaxy, other place, that they came here a long time ago, seeded humanity, and that they're coming to save us from ourselves again at later date, which will be, in my opinion, one of the biggest deliberations and one of the most important choices that people are going to have to make in either accepting the fallen angels, the extraterrestrials, as being our gods, or in understanding the truth as revealed within the scriptures that the Godhead is, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, that they are the true, the gods which really did create us and that established everything for us, that we were made in their image and that we are the apple of their eye. There's not another so-called planet or solar system or galaxy or any of that out there in the truth of cosmology.
This is another reason I like movies, and then I even cover some of them, like I've said. But one that I did with a friend of mine, he's got a really big channel, so it was really fun. It's had a lot of views just because of him. But we did a commentary on the movie Cowboys and Aliens, and I had never seen it. And for some reason, I was like, we should watch that and we should do commentary on it. And for an hour and 40-minute movie or whatever, our commentary ended up being an hour and 40 minutes. It was kind of funny. Unfortunately, I didn't know about the Sumerian myth before, and I wish I had, because that movie portrays exactly that. Aliens come to Earth, and it, for whatever reason, they picked the time of cowboys, which I found really interesting. When I'm talking cowboys, like, we were on horse-drawn carriages and things like that. I found it interesting because these people, they called them devils and demons. And I'm like, well, they would say that because they hadn't even been to a point where they would think it could be aliens, because that's not even something that they were lying about yet.
Right.
And I'm like, well, that's not obvious. And so these aliens came, and what do you suppose? They go underground into the caverns, and they're taking the gold and putting it up into their machines with this advanced technology. Now, what was interesting is they weren't here to save us. It was they're either done in movies where they come to save us, or they're scary horror movies. Like somebody mentioned Pennywise saying we all float down here. That might be a promise later, but they show it in a scary movie so that when it comes, it's just, what do you call it? Soft disclosure. So that when it actually comes time to do that, it won't be the horror movie like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It'll be something like, oh, this sounds great. And I kind of remember something about this in a movie one time, but it didn't happen like that, But anyway, Cowboys and Aliens, exact story of the Sumerian myth, where they're coming from another world and they need our gold to take back to theirs, but they were not here to save us, and which is exactly the truth. That was the truth in that movie. They're not here to save us. They're here to kill us.
Right, and to take us over. And also to prevent any of us from inheriting the ordinances that they abandoned so long ago. And so, yeah.
Fun stuff. I knew we'd get back to the serpent seed.
Yeah, right. Well, it's an integral part of, the bigger picture, the story of what is the war in heaven and its connections to the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent.
Right, and if you can see that as truth, which again, it's hard for people, but I'm grateful for your community and my community, because a lot of people in my community don't argue with me on that, and they don't think it's crazy. But yeah, when you try to talk to your everyday people, if they'll sit and listen, you'll watch them kind of go, oh, that kind of makes sense. Just like when you went on with Red Pill 78. I don't think he'd ever heard anything like that before in his whole life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and his listening audience too. A lot of that was new consideration. But again, when you really open yourself to the possibilities of those things that I'm saying, it helps you to unite even the biblical prophetic side of the understanding of world to the esoteric, the ancient mysteries, and also to the conspiratorial, the New World Order and all of that, because there's an underlying truth which brings together everything in bigger picture, and so yeah, it's good to have individuals like yourself, Red Pill, and others that are representing communities of truth seekers that are new to some of this information, that you guys are, leading them to information that they otherwise may never have considered previously.
And you notice if they're willing to listen, I even heard him say, well, that makes a lot of sense. And you could see it on his face.
Right.
He's like, I've never thought of that. And it's kind of ringing true.
Right. Exactly.
Unfortunately, you had a lot of people getting really mad too, but that's what we're going to face in the world. And I would like to say that I think that's what this path of YouTube has been for me, to prepare me to go out in the physical world and be ready to face the challenges of opposition.
Yes, exactly. Because you're going to always find that, especially when you cover really controversial issues and topics, and all of us essentially are just trying to come to the truth. But what, for most people, it's overcoming their indoctrination and what they think they already know of as truth, to even consider new possibility. And that's the hardest thing for most people. And that goes with serpent seed, pre-existence, flat earth, whatever. That a lot of people already pridefully, arrogantly think that we know, like teenagers growing up, they think they already know everything. And so what we learn over time is that we don't really know much of anything when it comes to truth.
One of the people I've been enjoying recently, and not trying to plug other people, I'm sure you've heard of him, but he goes by the name of Ray Comfort. He's been around many, many, many years, and he very simplistically points back to the Ten Commandments and salvation. And I've seen the way he deals with people. Same with the way Red Pill was listening to you. It's like something rings true all of a sudden.
Right.
And he's going out and talking to atheists, neo-Nazis. I mean, the guy's got to have so much patience. But I look at that and that's what I'm saying I'm trying to learn how to do, is to be able to present information that is definitely going to oppose people's belief systems and their belief structures, and not get frustrated, and definitely not get angry. I don't really get it. Frustration would be a better word for how I feel most of the time, but not to get frustrated, and to just understand that I planted a seed and to let it go at that, and hopefully it will come around someday in the future.
Yes, and for a lot of people, that's really all you can do. Is it's meaningless, it's worthless to spend time arguing with them, because they're really not open to new consideration. But if you do plant seeds, and then at some point they have an aha moment in their life, then they'll be like, oh, wait a second, I heard Erin talking about that. Maybe I should go look at that again, and then reconsider. And it's in doing that that we really learn that we really don't know a lot with regard to truth and reality. And that people that, again, can come to that discernment, come to that understanding, and then embrace something new, those are the ones that are going to be convicted of and be led in discernment to truth.
Right. And I can even point to, there's a guy that told me about eight years ago now, I was pregnant with my first daughter, and he was not really a friend, but he was just somebody who needed a place to stay with me and my husband. And we said, sure, you can stay for a couple of days. And he's telling us about the weather being created, the clouds being created, and all this stuff that we now know, as we know it. But back 8 years ago, I thought the guy was absolutely Looney Tunes. I was like, we were joking about how crazy this was. Me and my husband were like, well,
Right.
Not sure we should let him stay much longer. And it turns out everything he said was true. And I don't remember his name, and I'm not going to be able to get a hold of him to tell him that. But even that guy, not being a Christian, planted a seed of truth in me that I now remember him talking about back then.
Right, right. And that is the way of it. Even for, especially for family, we want so much for them to have an interest in truth, and we want so much to be able to share that with them. But unless they're willing they're not going to hear you anyways. And that a lot of times it just ends up in argument, and that you really, you will drive them away from further from truth than you do in bringing them to it. And so I think that we should respect people for where they are, honor them for, you know, where they are with regard to truth, plant the seeds and try to help, and then really just pray for them and leave it with the Most High.
Well, I agree. And I think we're right at the 2 hour mark, which is pretty perfect.
Yes, exactly. And so, again, I appreciate everybody listening in. Erin and I are going to try to get together at least once a month and to, ask and share and fellowship. And hopefully I can guide her on some things that she's new to, and that she can also lead me in discernment to things that I've never considered before. And so we learn together in coming together in this manner. And so thank you, everybody, for joining us. We greatly appreciate you. Erin, can you give out your website and, your YouTube and contact, anything that you'd like to share with
Yes,
us?
Yes, I want to say thank you too. I really appreciate, like I said it twice before, but I'm going to say it again. I appreciate everyone's patience with letting me ask questions that you may have had information for a long time. And I think that's great, because that's the way we do learn together. And maybe there were some people in here that didn't know some of those things. And so I hope they learned something too. I learned a ton, and I am now excited to continue on this road. And yes, I do believe I've got a firm belief and foundation in the fact that it's not a globe. In fact, I really was thinking that for a long time, but it's hard to find people to ask these questions to. So thank you very much for doing that with me. I have a gold and silver business. I'm only mentioning it because I think gold and silver are important when it comes to preparing for any kind of crash of the dollar or that. So nobody has to come to my business to buy gold and silver, but I will put a link for it, and I will also give my email, because I tell people I will answer questions about gold and silver, whether you buy it from me or not, because I think it's fair that everybody has the right to understand why they should be buying gold and silver, what kind of pieces and parts should they be buying when it comes to gold and silver, depending on their goals. And I'm willing to answer those questions. You don't ever have to buy anything from me. I'll still help you with that, because I would have been pretty upset if being a widowed mother of 2 children, somebody didn't come to me and give me that information because I didn't buy from their business. So please feel free to come to me about that. I do have a YouTube channel. You see me in the chat right there. I just dropped my email and a link to my gold and silver business. And if you click on my name, that's my YouTube channel. I get into a lot of different stuff. I get into AI kind of stuff. Like you said, third strand programmable matter. And I also do some movies, covering some movies. And I connect it to what the elite and the AI, the future, what possibly the third strand, possibly the mark of the beast is going to be. However, I want everyone to know I always end in prayer on my live channels, and I always bring it back to Jesus. And so I really do try to keep it positive and prepared, not scared.
Awesome. Well, would you like to end this show in prayer for us?
I would be happy to do that.
Awesome.
Thank you. Oh, Father in heaven, this is a great community, but first we thank you for who you are. We do worship you. Hallowed be thy name is exactly how we should be thinking about you. You created us, and we are grateful for this life. We are grateful for our families. We're grateful for this community. You have brought us together in a way that we could have never done by ourselves. So we appreciate that you have put your hand on that. We come to you, Lord Jesus Christ, first for all truth and discernment and wisdom, and we go from there. And if you've shown us the truth, Lord, we trust and believe in it, and we wish to go out and share that in the best way with a humble heart, shining like the light of Jesus Christ. We love you, and we thank you for being here in the show, being on people's hearts. And we pray the full armor. If anything I've said was wrong or incorrect, I just pray it be struck from everyone's minds without offense. And I just want to say thank you one more time, because I can't stop being grateful for who you are in our lives and how you've proven yourself to me and cared enough to show me who you really are. And I pray in your mighty name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Erin. And happy almost New Year, everybody.
Yes.
We're about to be 2020, and, new year, new decade. It's amazing. And I just pray for discernment for all of you out there. And thank you for taking the time to listen to us. And just real quick, we will be doing our patron only AMA tonight at 9 p.m. For those of you that do support us as patrons, we greatly appreciate you as well. And then tomorrow night, I'll be on with Rob Skiba again to continue our introspection into the Book of Enoch from 12 midnight to 2 a.m. But you can't have a better way to bring in, the new year. So thank you, Erin. We'll do it again soon. Be blessed, everyone. Shalom.
Thank you all. God bless.
Good night, all.